All right, guys, welcome to this episode of the You Need You podcast. Today's guest is someone that I've known for quite a while, a stud, someone who likes to work out, someone who likes to get after it. But we also have pretty similar views when it comes to politics. But every time I'm talking to him about it, it seems to be at work, and I don't have that time to sit down and actually discuss it. So that's this episode today. We'll also be talking about a lot more. Whatever comes up, man. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself, whatever you want us to know. All right.
Yeah. My name's Evan Sherwood. I'm originally from outside of Philadelphia, born and raised in Montgomery County. Moved down here to South Carolina about 7 years ago. Graduated from Coastal during COVID 2020. So luckily, I got to be here in South Carolina when all the shutdowns were going
Yeah.
on, rather than being in Pennsylvania, where eventually they were moving toward vaccine passports. So I was told, just like states like New York. So glad I wasn't there for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I spent a lot of time either, if I'm not at work, I'm working somewhere else. I work in the restaurant industry. So I'm working multiple different places. I also do CrossFit. So I train 5, 6, sometimes 7 times a week, multiple times a
Yes, sir.
day. So time is not on my side, but as I like to tell people, or people tell me, you've got like 9 jobs.
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
life I live right now, while at the same time, trying to put out content. And I would say also try to do as much research as I can when it comes to things like politics and really just finding out what's going on in the real world today, whether that's in relationships, just not even that, but even keeping up on reading the news, things that are going on in day-to-day life, paying attention to that, researching what's going on and what could be coming up down the road when it comes to anything economically or otherwise.
Gotcha. Cool, man. So, you will be my last episode before the election actually takes place, and I know that it's gonna be interesting regardless of who wins. I think
Yeah.
might have some crazy liberals or some crazy conservatives in the street afterwards. But um, I just wanted to ask you to touch on some key issues that are most important to you when you're thinking about like who you wanted to vote for and stuff like that.
So I would say the biggest issues are going to be issues that I see every day. And I think that's going to be the same thing you see for most people is, how does this affect, first off, me, my
Hmm.
family, and then the community around me, and then everyday Americans, right? So with that being said, for me, it comes down to what's in my bank account. That's
Yeah.
the struggle that I have, like most people. I don't work 3 jobs because I want to work 3 jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a cost benefit analysis to that. However, in the long run, is that getting me closer to where I want to be? Am I also being able to put money in the bank? More than likely, not. It's a struggle. I work
Yeah.
6 to 7 times a week, every day, whether living here in Myrtle Beach, whether it's in season and tourism is high, or it's in the off season and tourism is very low and locals may or may not come out. There's no guarantee.
Yeah.
Looking at the bank account and seeing what's in there and what bills are costing, how much is Santee Cooper, how much am I going to pay them? How much am I going to pay Conway Water and Sewer? What's my escrow going to look like on my house when they redo the escrow analysis? Is it going to go up or down? Am I forking
Yeah.
out more on my mortgage? Is my insurance going up? Is my property tax going up? Um, and then other things after that are, of course, job security with the border. So we have all these hundreds of thousands of people coming to this country. And,
Yeah.
the things you see on the news, whether it's the mainstream media or even on social media, you see enough about Lake and Riley stories and all these other people who are hurt by illegal aliens that are coming over here and
Yeah.
either committing murders, crimes, and other dangerous things. So I'd like safety for, my community as well, among a plethora of things. But the biggest thing that factors me the most personally is going to be the economy, and how is that going to look like? What is it going to look like for me in the next 4 years?
Gotcha. Yeah, I would agree for me personally too. Today it kind of fell right into place with what we're talking about right now because I had this person hit me up, a liberal person who is trying to argue that the economy is better or no, it's worse now because of Trump. And
I've heard that
after
too.
and it's
Yeah.
like but we've lived through 4 years of Trump, and now we're living through this, and I'm like,
Well,
this
so the
doesn't
thing
add
I would,
up.
yeah. So the thing I would say to people when it comes to that thing is, yeah, because the economy isn't really made to see changes within a 4-year structure. So
Yeah.
it's like what happens with every cycle when you have Republicans in the majority of power and then you have Democrats in the change of power. Things are going
Mhm.
to shift either way when
Constantly.
it comes
Yeah.
to all policy. So economic, foreign, domestic, um, and vice versa. So when Barack Obama was in power into when Trump was in power, you saw things shift a different way. And when you cut that off 4 years later, when it's still supposed to be on an uphill or a downhill, at the end of whichever term you're talking about, you
Yeah.
see that a lot more, a huge snag in 4 term years rather than a president who's sitting for 8. Talking almost a
Yeah.
decade, you can have steady or significant growth. In 4 years, that's even tough to do. And Trump did that, and especially with
Yeah.
the artificial, fall that COVID landed, being able to bring that back up by the end of 2020 in September, October, November, and December. And then the new administration comes around in January, and all of a sudden, things in May of 2021, sorry, and early
Yeah.
22 start to become ridiculous because people realize they're getting all that stimulus money. They're spending all that stimulus money. When they go do their returns in 22 for the year of 21, they had to give all that back. They didn't have anything in their bank accounts. Everybody went
Borrowing.
into
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
Everybody owed the bank fee. Everybody had to pay the bank fees because they didn't have any money in their account because they spent that because they didn't know that the government was going to try to take that back. And
Interesting. I didn't know
it
that.
became very difficult. But yeah, it's
So,
really these, back and forth 4 years. And who knows, we could see that the next couple cycles because
yeah.
Americans nowadays are so back and forth. They if you think about the elections in general, it's no longer about who am I voting for and why I'm voting for that person. You're
Yeah.
hearing I'm anti this, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
like more
people
so
out
what you're
there
against.
that are just, they're not even Democrats, they're anti-conservatives,
Yeah.
right? And likewise for the other side of the aisle, you have anti-liberals that aren't really pro-conservative, that may not be conservative on a lot of issues. They find
Yeah.
themselves more in the middle, but
Mhm.
they absolutely abhor things on the
Yeah.
left wing of the aisle because they've just taken things to an extremist standpoint and yet want to
Yeah.
lay blame and say there's threats to democracy on the other side while inherently doing things that threaten democracy, like having a
Yeah.
DEI candidate in place right now that was
Yeah.
not picked by anybody. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about a literal actual DEI candidate for a major ticket on one side of
Yeah.
the aisle for this upcoming election. That's taking away the voices of that whole side of America and the whole
Yeah.
left wing. Those people didn't choose her. And that's what's scary to people is how many more times is that going to happen? And that's what I tell people all the time is, okay, this is a first time, yes, but what's going to stop them from pushing the pencil off the edge of the desk? Because once it
Yeah.
falls off, it's going to be too late. And
Yeah.
you start
And
to see
from
these things happen over and over again.
yeah, from my point of view, it's very interesting because a lot of people would said that there wasn't time like to have the primaries and all that, but it almost seems like after the debate with Biden and Trump, like the liberal media was attacking Biden immediately after that. It was almost to
No,
me like they
absolutely.
almost set it up for him to look bad, fail, like essentially just slander him and then be like, "Oh, we need someone new." It's like you didn't know that before. You guys were defending him up to this point, and then a
Yeah,
flip
because they're
switch out of
not
nowhere.
they're not afraid to throw people under the bus. They're not afraid
Yeah.
to take the trash out. As soon as they turn around, as soon as you turn around, they'll throw you in the trash can, have the truck come by your street, pick it up and dump it and haul it away. They do
Yeah.
this all the time. I mean, it's disgusting behavior, but it's really where the cancel culture has come from. They've created this themselves, yet they also are the same people that are gaslighting everyday Americans saying that's not what's happening. Cancel culture isn't real. Why is it that everybody on CNN, MSNBC, all these other left wing organizations and horrible trash bag humans that are saying this, like Brian Stelter, Don
Yeah.
Lemon, all these people, the Cuomos, who people were listening to those guys, and look at where they're at now. None of them
Yeah.
are even on those shows anymore. But those same programs are still promoting that horrible behavior.
Yeah. Going on to the second issue that you mentioned, the border. I found it very contradictory on their side, especially when Kamala is saying things when it comes to women's reproductive rights and protecting women and standing up for women. Yet the open border allows like these illegal aliens through that are raping women and murdering women. And to me, while I do stand very moderately on the pro-choice issue, it doesn't make sense that like I think safety comes first. Like safety should come first. Like
Mm.
you shouldn't be like, oh, I want this woman to have the freedom and the right to go have an abortion, and then also just like almost facilitating the rape at the same time. That's a bold thing to say, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very
no, I
like
mean,
to me, it's like you want to give them freedom, you want to stand up for women, but then you don't want to close the border that's allowing like the chances of women to get murdered and raped are going up.
yeah. So what they're doing is they also don't want to, you know, actually focus on the issues and let's say the circumstances as to why those things happen at a more alarming rate than they should. Now, rape and incest and are the two biggest uh, things that people talk about or reasons
Yeah.
why women go into Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics. And it's really, I think it's less than 5%
It's
is
very
the
low.
actual
It's
cases. I don't
very
even think
low.
it's 5%. That's being generous. It's less than that.
Mhm.
And the crazy thing is that I think it was Pew Research Center that said it maybe a year or two ago, or it could have even been Planned Parenthood themselves, because they blatantly state that they kill 250,000 babies every year.
That's
I mean, that's right on their
crazy.
website. They say that. So I believe in Planned Parenthood says that, some of them, 66% have gone twice.
Wow.
So that should be an alarming thing. 66% of the abortion cases are women that have gone back there for a second time, not a first time, for a second time or more. So
Yeah.
it's being used as an actual form of
Like,
contraception way
yeah.
after the fact. Now,
Yeah.
you could go back to even, I think, in the 90s, where you had Bill Clinton saying that it was a necessary evil, and most people would have gotten along with that. But it's because most Americans, even on the left wing of the aisle, that aren't
Yeah.
shouting all crazy about it, will even agree that, it should be done within 15 weeks. I think is what you
Yeah.
hear most people say, and most people are okay with less than 15 weeks. Um, but it for people on the right side of the aisle who are very evangelical or very
Yeah.
religious Christians, you're going to see Trump's starting to lose momentum with them a little bit, because
Yeah.
he's been still
For
kind
sure.
of moderate on that and floated right at about the shouldn't be more than 15 weeks. Same thing, necessary evil.
Yeah.
But it's still a very sad thing, and it really is, because
Yeah.
think about it,
Of course.
there isn't a single abortion that doesn't end with the death of a baby,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so, with that being said, you'll have then the evangelicals losing favor with Trump because they want absolutely none of it. They want zero. They don't want it
Yeah.
all. They want a complete, abortion ban, and that's not. And they don't have enough influence.
Yeah.
There's not enough of them to have a big say in
Yeah.
the conservative side of the aisle for that to be a big win for Donald Trump and the independents and conservatives against the
Yeah.
left, because they're
I
obviously
agree.
not going to go for it. And even with what Trump did, referring it back to the states, you still have crazy leftists who are freaking out going into, hey, this is my right, this is this is my right, my choice. I can do whatever I want. Nobody can tell me what to do. Well, at that point, when you have a fetus inside you, it's no longer just your body.
Yeah. You're
It
responsible
is.
for another human being.
It is not a. And here's the thing: it's not a potential human life. It's a human life with potential,
Yeah.
and that's what they refuse to acknowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's deep, man. So for me, I'm definitely, I like where Trump stands with the three, like, the three exceptions, obviously. But I do know people that are very like even against that, which I find kind of crazy. But it's mainly religiously
Mm-hmm.
influence. So teach their own, I guess. But I do think there is a positive to having it state by state, personally, because not that anyone can just pick up their life and move, but you see a lot of times like I moved from Pennsylvania to South Carolina. I not that it was for political reasons, but I moved
Yeah.
somewhere where I liked how the government functioned and such,
Yeah.
versus like just picking up and going out to California and being like, I hate it here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's just very, that's a deep subject. I look at it as in like, I always, in every single situation, I try to like look at the person's intentions. And I think when it becomes a whole like, you were irresponsible and now you just want to discard a life, I think that's crazy. But
Yeah.
that's where we
Well,
get
and
when
that's
it's like,
yeah. Then that's what I go back
yeah,
and tell those people is, well, then, you know, when were you born? Oh, you were born during that 50 years within that time? Well, then I hope you thank your parents
yeah,
because you're lucky they didn't get rid of you.
yeah, it's
They could
true.
have. They could have just easily as gotten rid of you as you to, a baby you would never know.
Yeah. I think that's cool though that you put it that way. Like it's a human with potential.
Yeah.
All right. So we kind of talked about the different candidates, but what role do you think social media is playing on influencing voters and voter
Oh my
turnout,
God, dude.
et cetera, et cetera? Dude, social media
Social
has
media, I
changed
think,
our
is
world.
playing a pretty decent role. I think not really social media to the same standpoint as the mainstream media, because they say probably both of those combined can probably swing about 10% of the popular vote. Um,
Gotcha.
and I mean, that's the biggest public domain belief. Uh, that being said, I think social media can be used as a great tool to, support your side and show, uncover the truths of, the campaigns and what they're going for, what they're really about, what the other ones
Yeah.
aren't about. Um, and especially grabbing more of a younger audience. So if a younger audience sees that, because it's mostly younger people that are
Yeah.
active on social media, at least on a daily basis. So that way it really gets in their face and kind of forces them to be somewhat knowledgeable. Um, but you, the other thing that you face with that is going to be the freedom of speech that everybody has, which everybody, every United States citizen has their First Amendment right to say whatever they want. So you hear all these other mainstream guys and social media people talk
Yeah.
about, well, we got to censor this and we can't talk about this and this is going to get taken down, and misinformation, disinformation, all that nonsense. Well, they're only trying to make a huge stink out of that, because misinformation to the left now is anything we don't like. And
Yeah.
politics is downstream of the culture. And who controls the culture? The media. And who controls the
Yeah.
media? Right. So, when you have other people that can actually break through that, like Donald Trump was just talking in an interview the other day about how he's on TikTok and
Yeah.
now he's doing super well on TikTok because the younger audience likes him. Not
Yeah.
everybody, but a good
Yeah.
amount of them do, because there are young conservatives that see this and think it is ridiculous, because they don't want to listen to a girl with blue or purple hair just screaming in their face, or whether they're paying $3,000 to go scream in the woods or something because they're
Yeah.
angry at society and other people are
Yeah.
making money off that. Or you have people like AOC who are using social media to sell sweatshirts that say tax the rich,
Yeah.
and she's making
Exactly. Yeah.
60 or $70 off them. You're using the capitalist system to make money, which is a system you hate. So you're a hypocrite at the same time.
Boom. Boom.
I mean, it becomes ridiculous. So social media, I think, can play a really big role in what happens, but also in what young people see. And it's really used to advertise or market to select audiences that haven't been reached yet.
Yeah. And I think I know this is, I mean, obviously how social media works, but your algorithm too like feeds you what you want to see though, which I think is frustrating to me because I would like when RFK first became popular, I was getting a
Yeah.
lot of like RFK videos. Obviously, I follow Trump, but
Yeah.
I'm getting all these RFK videos, and then I like when he was first coming up, I like Jocelyn never had any RFK stuff on her feed, and now she has conservative stuff, but like it doesn't just pop up. You know what I mean? So whoever is like very liberal, they're being constantly fed liberal material. Whoever's conservative, so I have to be careful with that on my own end, because I'll
Yeah.
see stuff that conservative people post. I'm like, wait, this is out of context, you know. And I
Yeah.
think it takes having an open mind and like realizing like, even though you do agree with this person and their views, like this is still overboard, you know.
Yeah.
So that's just frustrating to me because I'm like, I want to, my buddy who back home, he's like an independent. Like that's what he claims to be. Like would always vote for the independent candidate, even if he didn't think they were gonna win. And then I'm like, I bring up RFK, and he didn't even know who he was. And I'm like, what do you mean? So
Yeah.
like, it's like his lack of, and I forgot to mention, he wasn't really on social media. So
Okay.
like, he's away from social media, away from like the TV media, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like completely unaware of what's going on.
Absolutely. So
And
that's the other
it
thing.
just,
I'm glad.
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say real quick. I was like, I'm glad you touched on that because that's the other thing is social media. It's fast. People look
Yeah.
at their phones hundreds of times a day. How many
Hmm.
times are they turning on the TV and watching whether it's Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC, whatever news network? They're not. They're only watching it when they go home, and that's even if their family watches it in their house. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people now that just can't even afford cable, so forget it. Forget the major news network. I mean, that's why the other thing about social media is it's fast and word gets out there fast. And whether it's fact or not fact, usually the first time people read something, they'll believe it to be true with a
Yeah.
snap of their fingers. But they have to deduce for themselves what is real and what is not real. Not the
Yeah.
whole my truth, my truth, my truth nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking about universal truth
What is
and
actually
fact
objectively
and
true.
what
Yeah.
did or did not happen or was said, etc.
Yeah. I encourage people to just have a like critically think about this stuff, you know, because as much as I'm not a Tim Waltz fan or anything, did you see there's a video with him with the shotgun hunting, and they were like,
Oh,
he doesn't
dude,
know. Yeah,
it looked
he
like he
was.
had never done it in his life.
Yeah, but
Mm,
I watching that video closer, he was like unloading a shotgun, which is a complicated process. And
yeah,
like they blew that up as like, oh, he doesn't know how to use a shotgun. And it's like, no. And then that's like things like that. I'm like, okay, this is over the board because I know it's actually going on. But anyone
yeah.
who doesn't know that, it's just like, oh, he'd never touched a gun in his life, et cetera, you know?
But it's like
So
how it's portrayed changes everything.
exactly. Yeah.
So
And
perception
that's
is
the
real.
stuff that's just like frustrating because as much as I'm like
Yeah.
on the right, it's like some of these dudes I follow are still just
Well, that's the
like
thing.
post.
It's
I'm
done
like,
on both sides.
yeah,
It's done on both sides, and that's why you have to pay attention to who you listen to. Because if you want, you know, a uh, news fact, paper, then go read those. But if you want an op-ed, that's a completely different thing. I mean, if you want opinion pieces, go
yeah,
watch certain people or read other people's stuff for their opinions. But you also have to separate out what facts you're listening to from what people's opinions are or
yeah,
what people's perceptions are because that may not be the same as you. I mean, you show two people the same video. I mean, and they say, "Oh, go watch this video. It's him, trying to load this shotgun." But yeah, you look at it closer, like a second and third time, you start to
yeah,
see, well, it's a little different. But what they're trying to do is, yeah, they're still trying to make fun of him. And now I only saw it like once, so
yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't
When I
know. I
first saw
wasn't
it, I
paying
was
that.
like, what is he doing? Yeah,
But
no,
like how he was doing it, regardless, I mean, it still looked like a very awkward and not normal position from what you normally see most people doing it. And I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
that's just a little interesting. I wasn't paying attention to whether he was loading it or not loading it, but
yeah,
you also hear people in the background. It's like you're also talking to him. You're also trying to, I mean, multitasking enough is hard enough.
yeah, yeah,
But in this video, yeah, that could really be pushed either way. Same things as
and
the
yeah,
videos that are made up about Donald Trump or,
yeah,
any other conservative on the right or liberal on the left.
yeah. But I feel like it happens all the time, so that's why it's just important to. I was trying to be open minded, and I actually had followed Kamala's Instagram for a while, and that lasted about a week before I felt like I wanted to rip my own head off, so I decided to unfollow her.
Well,
Yeah,
that's why
I
I
was.
encourage people to listen to both sides, because
Yeah,
if you do, you can see yourself like, oh yeah, that's why I don't listen to them,
yeah.
because they are gaslighting me, or
Because if they
because they are
say,
saying things that I know not to be true. How many times
yeah,
do we have to listen to Charlottesville? How many
yeah,
times do we have to listen
or
to, he
middle class.
said, this about the generals or whatever, or,
Hmm.
there were good people on both sides. Like, how many times that's been denounced? This has been denounced. This has been denounced. XYZ has been denounced. And you're going to keep the Project 2025, which Donald Trump has denounced himself. The Trump or the 2025 Project 2025 group denounced it themselves with a public statement on their social media, also saying that Trump was not a part of their group. They said
Yeah,
that. However, it doesn't fit the media narrative. And the media narrative is, we need to stop Trump at all costs. Because at the end of the day, what they don't like is you. They don't hate you because they hate Trump. They hate Trump because they hate you.
yeah, that's deep. All right, so who do you think is going to win?
I mean, I think it's
And
kind of
what do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's kind of a fool's errand to call it right now, only
Yeah,
because um, now if you look at like Real Clear Politics polling
yeah,
and multiple other polls, they're all starting to even out, right? So some of them had a little differentiation, but now they're starting to even out when it gets close, which
yeah,
usually means that they're all kind of generating a very uh, similar outcome. And the similar outcome that they're all at is within margin of error. So now, based on
gotcha.
the average polling from all of those, they're saying that in most of these states, Trump's up either like half a point or a point or a quarter of a point. I think back in Michigan, Kamala went back up like half a point. But I mean, it's all in margin of error. So the
Yeah,
reason why they're all polling and averaging now the same numbers in all these polls is because none of the pollsters want to be wrong, because then they'll look like
yeah,
they bombed it. But if you look back at the 2020 election and the 2016 election, Donald Trump was underpolled both times. He had a significantly higher
yeah,
outreach when it came to voting in both elections and overperformed. So if the question now is who is getting underpolled? If it's Trump getting underpolled, he wins. Great. However, if Kamala is getting underpolled,
yeah,
she could win. So it's really going to be the fight of the blue wall. So like Michigan, Pennsylvania,
yeah. The swing states. Yeah,
Wisconsin, it's going to be tough. I think he's probably going to lock up uh, Arizona, Georgia,
yeah.
North Carolina, um, probably
Ah,
what's the other
man,
one? Nevada. I think he'll get that one,
I'm not. Yeah, I
but
think I'm hoping he gets Pennsylvania, but
I'm
we'll
hoping he
see.
gets Pennsylvania. He got Pennsylvania in 16. He didn't get it in 2020.
Yeah,
But I don't know if you've
I feel
heard of it.
like
There's this bakery that does a presidential election cookie every time there's a presidential election. It's called like Lockel's Bakery or something like
yeah,
that. And my friend Logan from back home, who's a conservative commentator, he's on TikTok and Instagram, and
yeah.
he reposted a lot and about this bakery. And within I think the last week, the number of cookies sold for Kamala was about 2,800.
Yeah.
The Trump cookies over about 32,000. And this is
That's
in
crazy.
Pennsylvania.
Damn.
And that's a pretty big swing number.
Yeah. I
So
I don't know. I
you
feel like
really
people
don't know.
like
It's tough
yeah. I feel like people like Biden just because he was under Obama, like
because he was a
back.
nobody,
Yeah.
because he didn't
And
bring any attention. And
yeah.
every time in every election now, they try to make it a referendum on the other person. All these elections literally come down to, you know, I'm going to vote for the person who's not the other one.
Yeah.
I'm voting for the person who
Lesser
I
of
don't
two
even care
evils.
who it is. It just can't be them. I'm voting for, Harris, or I'm voting for Biden because they're not Trump. when did we get to a point where we are not confident enough to believe in the person that we're picking forward?
Yeah.
So, okay, if it wasn't Trump, does that mean you'd put Lizzo up there? I mean, what does she know about economic policy? I, is
I
she
mean, they
fit
vote for
to
Taylor
lead?
Swift, so
I mean, or same thing with Taylor Swift. I mean, Taylor
they'd
Swift
vote
too.
for
The
her.
fact that people, and even very extreme college liberals or leftists that follow her and are Swifties,
Yeah.
that follow her and say, oh, well, I'm going to vote for whoever Taylor Swift votes for. And then she comes out and says, oh, well, of course, I'm going to vote for the left wing. Well, guess what, guys? She's popular for making songs about making the wrong choices.
Yeah. And she's a billionaire too, so
And she's a billionaire.
she's not
And
worried
guess
about
what? And
buying
she's
a
going to
house or
lose
anything.
money. She lost money from endorsements and funds after she came out and supported Biden.
Uh, it's a
Not
lot.
that it
You
hurt her
got
that bad, but money
yeah,
talks.
yeah. Do you have anything else? I'm gonna hop into social media as a broad subject, but do you want to say anything else about the election before we move on?
No, I mean, I just tell people, I say, make sure to go out and vote. Just go out
Yeah,
and vote. It's too close to be down to the wire. You know, it looked
yeah,
like Trump had momentum going in, but you can't let that momentum within the last week be like, oh, okay, well, he's got a lot. If I don't go, they'll make up for it. No, 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 no. You got to go. It's
yeah,
also one of our duties as citizens to vote.
yeah,
Same with paying taxes,
yep.
right? And that's the same duty. I mean, vice versa. The government has a duty to us, you know,
Hmm.
like protecting us with our military as well for our freedom. But I would tell people just make sure to go out and vote, um, and yeah, just make the choice.
Yeah,
Know why you're picking who you're picking, not because of the other party, but know why you're voting for who you believe in.
cool. Yeah, I would say definitely go vote. I feel like people who say they don't care about politics or don't take the time to vote and then want to give their opinion, I'm like, why are you even talking? So make sure you go out, have your voice be heard. Hopping into the subject of social media and its effects on society. In your opinion, what is the most significant positive and negative impacts on social media and society? This is kind of going into the UniDU side of things, mental health, uh, identity, whatever it may be.
So I think one of the I'll start with the pro. I think one of the biggest pros to this is it's kind of it can be a nice way to uh, grow a business and build a brand. And I think nowadays, because working the whole 9 to 5 or working 3 jobs like I do just ain't
Yeah.
working for the average American and person in general, that you know you got to try to find ways to make side hustles and make money. Build a brand, make a base, create a company, sell stuff, market, advertise. Social media is one of the fastest and quickest ways to do that, grow, scale, and research. It's almost like Google. I mean, you can literally find anything you need. You could go on there, go to the search, Reels, and search, hey, I want to see motivating Reels. You know, I want to see David Goggins talk about, you know, XYZ for mental discipline. You know, you can
Yeah.
learn it, to use it to learn new things or see things you've never seen before, discover new places that you might want to travel. You can use it as such a great tool. And I think that's one of the great pros to social media
Yeah.
is it can be a great tool if you use it in a way that's going to be advantageous to you. Now, that being said, one of the biggest cons is not just the endless scrolling,
Yeah.
but the depression that a lot of people can get into from that and start to think
Hmm.
that some of the things they see on there are normal, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to things like body type and fitness. And the fitness
Hmm.
industry is really meant to be a very positive thing, right? All about gym culture. And you've got great influencers out there that uplift the
Yeah, for
community.
sure.
I mean, I would throw out Joey Swole is probably one of the greatest people to do this. And what does he do? I mean, he is the CEO of Gym Positivity. That is his brand. And what
Gotcha.
he does is he basically denounces some of the people who are trying to ruin it. And you see this in the culture, in the classroom, and all this stuff
Yeah.
all the time. It takes one person to ruin things for everybody else. So you have people that use it in a harmful way intentionally to say, maybe it's some girl saying, "Oh, all these guys are looking at me. They're staring at me. They're, just so gross. They're all pervs." No. It's like, I mean, when you have a tripod set up in the middle of the gym, they're like, "Yeah, who is this? What is she
Yeah,
doing? This is
exactly.
Planet
Yeah.
Fitness." I mean, it
Yeah.
it just looks weird. They're staring at you because they don't know what's going on. And everybody looks around. It's not that they're trying to stare at you, but yes, they notice you because they're human beings.
Yeah.
So it can be used in a very detrimental effect too. Especially like I said, when it comes back to things like body shaming and even seeing things in the gym of, that's healthy. Well, some people get into eating disorders because they think they have to starve themselves to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Or cyberbullying and things like that. There's a lot of downfalls to social media as well. But one of the biggest problems is, I would say, is using it to actively do harm,
Yeah. I think
from a mental standpoint or,
yeah. Yeah, when I think about it, I think at our age, like I feel like we have a pretty good grip on it and like we kind of grew up with it, but we weren't like raised on it, you know?
yeah.
I
So
feel
you
like we
kind of
kind of
caught
hit
it in
the
like high
we hit the
school.
sweet spot. Yeah, like we know
Yeah.
where we like know how to use it, but we weren't like necessarily programmed by it. That's how I feel.
Mhm.
But
Oh,
my biggest
absolutely.
thing is like thinking about like having kids in the future and stuff like that. That's my biggest like concern almost
Yeah.
because now you have like even like these TV shows, like these reality like romantic TV shows that I hate so much. It's mainly it's because it's like making people think certain things are okay or like painting a false narrative, you know. And I just feel like to a young mind, and like I'm sure I've been influenced, obviously, when I was younger on certain things, but to a young mind, I feel like it can be very misleading, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's another thing too is, another great pro to con that's pretty similar here is finding good role models through social
Yeah,
media
true.
versus bad role models. So that's another thing, like I say to people all the time, is when most people or, like the government in politics or other entities try to tell you not to listen to somebody because
Yeah,
they're XYZ, and then you listen to them and they're saying things like, "Hey, you should want to go out there and work hard. You should be disciplined. You should be consistent. You should want to get to financial freedom. You should want to better yourself. You should want to start a family, and be independent of your own right and not be on government dependency or whatever it is." When they try to shut people like that are trying to help you and tell you to be better,
yeah,
that should be scary. Because on the other side, you have people who are horrible role models that are on there. You really
yeah,
think Kim Kardashian is one of the best role models for you? Do you really think, listening to the song WAP, do you think
yeah, for
that
real.
artist is, a good role model? You think Lizzo is a good role model for health? I mean, at what point do you talk about, you know, I mean, even just that. I mean, if you ever talk about, like I said, fitness and like health of the body,
Yeah,
at what point do we acknowledge it as a health issue? But some people
yeah,
will say,
that's
well, we don't. We don't. She's beautiful, and you
yeah,
have to say that. But
yeah.
don't
That's
let
always
other people fool you. You have to
yeah,
come up with that decision on your own and figure out for you who is actually going to help me and who's going to strive me to get further. Fake
yeah,
people have large crowds. Small, like real friends, are in
yeah.
smaller groups.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's like so backwards because like even with mental health and like talking about mental health and being like this is something people often like don't talk about or like if they see it they're like kind of shy away from it, but usually physical health it was different, but now since society has become a little bit more woke it's like oh mental health I have problems I have this I have this I have this, but then if someone's literally physically out of shape and it's bad for their health we're not supposed to say anything about that. So I get where the whole like if someone's overweight don't be offensive obviously,
Yeah, don't be
but
rude.
it's got blown way out of
Yeah,
proportion. I think it's just it's sad, and I think that's one of the bigger like if you love someone, like if someone's an alcoholic, you want them to be better. You don't just accept that. It's the
you just
same
don't. Yeah,
thing with being overweight because cardiovascular disease, heart failure is like the number one killer, and it's usually from complications with being overweight and stuff. So
Yeah, and
That's
being
a
overweight
whole
in
different
general,
subject.
yeah, and being overweight in general leads to a huge amount of health complications. Yeah, I mean, heart issues, fatty liver, too, diabetes or
Mhm.
pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
I mean, the possibilities are endless, and even just some of the skin diseases you can get from
Yeah.
rolls of fat and not getting cleaned properly. I mean, if you can or can't get in the shower,
Yeah.
there's so many health defects, and but that also comes from diet and
Mhm.
what you eat on a regular basis, and it comes down to a simple breakdown of calories in versus calories out. You don't have to be rude to these people to say, hey, I'm not going to just go up to Lizzo and say, hey, you look like shit. You stop trying to tell people all this nonsense about, yeah, you're healthy and beautiful. Okay, yeah, you may be very nice. I'll be very polite. But I say, you know, at what point do we acknowledge that this may be unhealthy? What is your
Yeah.
doctor going to tell you? Is your doctor on board with this? How do you feel? Can you get up every day, not sore, feeling fine, no bloating, which bloating to the body is not natural. It is
Yeah.
not a natural human form. It's because we eat things that our body is not meant to process. That's why
Yeah.
people are bloated.
Yeah. I don't know. I
But
think that's a very that's a whole subject in itself, but
oh yeah,
that
that's a
goes
whole
along
different.
with the whole like just being not calling out anything for what it really is type thing. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
being woke. It's a form of being woke.
We'll see it. We just can't acknowledge it.
Yeah. I mean, you walk into Target nowadays and the models on the wall are like, heavy set, And here's the thing. There is a place for like what do you call it? Um, I don't know, allowing people to realize that not everyone's perfect. That's good. But to go
Yeah,
to the like to be extremely woke and have, you know, one model has a handicap, next model is Asian, next model is overweight, next like the reason like that they're pushing it in your face, that's what makes it frustrating, I think, to most people.
yeah,
Because you walk in there and you're like, what is this? When we were growing up, it's like supermodels were like, hey, like the hot people. And
yeah. Well, because everybody, I mean, the standard for years was like Victoria's Secret models, and now it's just whatever.
not Victoria's
Now
Secret
it's not Victoria's. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
it's just it's because it's all about equity now, and you see that in all areas of life. Like I said, whether it's those things in Target, whether it's on social media, whether it's in politics, whether it's on the news, whether it's in freaking sports. That's why
Mhm.
most people don't even care to see ESPN because of how politically correct they are. Just get the YouTube
Yeah.
TV. That's what people are doing now because they don't want to
Mhm.
see the political commentary involved in sports.
So I think I know your answer to this question, but it was, do you think social media companies should be held accountable for the content that is shared on their profile or on their platforms?
I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no because of our freedom of speech that we have in this country,
Yeah.
and almost all of these organizations, I guess except TikTok, are U.S. based companies.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess if they're also operated in other countries and they have different laws and things or different regulations, okay, sure, because that's where you live, and if you originate from there,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But here, I would say no, because unless they're doing something of speaking actual violence or somebody is threatening you or to do you physical harm, like I'm going to come to your
Yeah.
house and I'm going to whatever. Unless that specifically is happening or an instance like that, no, because everybody can say what they want, whether it's an opinion or a fact or something they thought of as a fact. People make mistakes. They can
Yeah.
make, a post saying, oh, this, politician just said this about somebody else. That may or may not be true. And those things, like I said, on social media, you'll see will go fast and it'll start getting spread and shared super fast. I mean, look at even what happened with perfect example in Israel when early on into the fight, when
Yeah.
a rocket that they thought was from the IDF hit a hospital in Palestine in the Gaza Strip, they were like, "Oh, it has to be the IDF, and it's one of their missiles that was faulty, and it killed like 500 Palestinians." Well,
Yeah.
all this was released in like a couple hours, and then it started being mainstream, was spread all over the place. Turns out, and the IDF does a whole investigation of this. Turns out it was actually a Hamas rocket that backfired, and it only killed, I think it was less than 9 or 10 people,
Damn.
and it was mostly terrorists.
Damn.
But it
Yeah.
was their own, but they tried to project it to the point of, hey, this is somebody else, it's not us, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Now, that's a different story, but we do have the freedom of the press, and at the same time, Americans have freedom of speech. So all these things can get posted as willy-nilly. Sure, I don't
Yeah.
think you can really hold these companies like Facebook, like X, like Instagram or Snapchat and set between people and say, oh yeah, we're going to censor these people. They censor things for misinformation, things that I've reposted on my Instagram. There were opinion pieces from people who were in real estate, like Grant Cardone, who happens to
Yeah.
be a Trump supporter. He was saying something about how, Kamala Harris would basically, destroy the economy, as we all know, right?
Yeah.
And, he's like stating his opinion in this video. It gets fact checked. And my story repost got taken down because that was fact checked. Well, who
Interesting.
does the fact checking? Independent fact checkers. Who are most independent fact checkers?
Liberal.
Left-wing extremists.
Yeah. That's
I mean, the AP is extremely left-wing. That's like also taking Media Matters seriously. I don't know, you probably know this, but a couple different people like Ben Shapiro and other people at Daily Wire, along
Yeah.
with people like Tucker Carlson, were sent messages from people at the New York Times asking them about, oh, do you feel bad about doing all these, saying things about misinformation and disinformation in your past? In your past videos, you said something about this, that Media Matters, mind you, an extreme
Yeah.
left wing fact checker and base, said that was wrong and that was misinformation. And therefore it must be taken down. And then they'll start messing with the algorithm to start hindering their performance and outreach. But basically, what this person was doing from the New York Times was reaching out to all these people and trying to cajole them into saying, oh, Media Matters says that you did a bad thing and that you actually said some bad things. Care to comment on that? Basically trying to make you plead guilty, catch 22 you, if you
Yeah.
will, into admitting you're guilty. And guess what? They're doing that right before the election. So that way they can use YouTube. And it's mostly people that have YouTube podcasts and videos because they
Yeah.
know Pew Research Center put out that 26% of people get their news now from YouTube or social media,
Yeah.
not the mainstream. So it's a crazy turn how that moves around.
Yeah. I think it's I know me personally, I get most of my information from podcasts. Like I think Joe Rogan is a huge
Yep.
platform. That's why I really appreciated like Trump and JD going on these platforms because not only
Oh,
do they
yeah.
actually have the time to talk about whatever they want, but it really brings out like the human side of them, which I think a lot of people like to see. Cause then you're like, oh, this is like an actual like dude, where like Kamala is very robotic every time she talks, and it's
Oh, it's a
quite
word salad.
frustrating. Yeah.
I mean,
The
how
middle
many
class
times do you have
kid.
to? People are tired of listening to the whole, well, I was raised in the middle
Housing.
class. That's not the question.
Yeah.
Stop using the same answer. It has nothing to do with it. We're talking about like foreign policy.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
or something else. How do you relate to Americans right now? Well, I grew up middle class. Yeah, like 40, 50 some years ago. People don't care. They
Yeah.
don't. You can't use, I mean, look, actors are meant to be scripted.
Yeah.
Politicians need to know what they're talking about, and she clearly doesn't. That's why they can't tranche her out. That's why they didn't tranche Joe Biden out, because of his obvious decline. But they don't have her talk and say things. All of these stunts that she's doing. I saw a thing the other day that talked about how that Shapiro actually talked about this and said, hey, Kamala was asked by Joe to come on the podcast, and she said no.
Yeah.
Instead, she actually reached back out to say, well, actually, you have to come here. It's going to be an hour, and like other stipulations. It's like, well, I'm the
Yeah.
host. I'm inviting you. You come to
Yeah.
me and I ask you the question. They wanted to have preset questions.
So yeah.
That's not how it works.
No.
That's what they're doing. That's why you see all these things where she was at a town hall where people are supposed to get up and ask you questions. It was all preconceived. It was
Yeah.
all premeditated. And then that's why you saw the video that went viral, that they had to turn the thing off, the teleprompter,
Yeah. 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 I
because it
saw.
had the whole script and the whole answer. Actors are supposed to be scripted. That's what they get
Yeah.
paid for.
Yeah.
Politicians are supposed to know what they're talking about so they can actually take care of the American people, and she clearly doesn't.
Yeah. It's embarrassing at the end of the day. I am mind blown that people still are. I see people walking around like with Kamala Harris hats on and stuff, and I'm like, mind you, it's on the campus, so it makes sense. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm like, what in the world, man? But no, I do agree, and I think that like freedom of speech is such a big topic that is beside RFK. I don't know if you know like a lot about him,
Yeah.
but that was like his main reason. Besides like the health stuff, and he thinks Trump will allow him to like kind of chase
Yeah.
his goals under his administration. Just having freedom of speech, and like the left wants to censor that, and it's just it's a crazy thing because like you said about earlier, like the pencil going off the edge of the table type thing, because these other countries that are communist dictatorships, they censor all their stuff. Like they only get to hear what the government allows them to hear, and I think it's a slippery slope. Not that saying that would happen anytime soon, but I think it's
Yeah.
something that you don't even like test, if that makes sense. That's just my opinion. Um, yeah. So let's hop into relationships. I know I've talked to you a bit about like how women, not across the board, but obviously like as in our age, like young men looking for women, and how the views have changed on like what's important to them, money, status, how rare like a conservative woman is with conservative values. But just do you want me to ask you a question, or you just want to like talk about it?
I can dive into that.
All right, go ahead.
So I would say the biggest things right now, especially for young dudes, is first off understanding what you're looking for, but also understanding the opposite sex and what they're probably looking for too. So first things you got to acknowledge, and this goes for really men and women, right? And either or, might not understand it. But what men have to realize is what women are thinking about is their biological clock, right? Because they want to have a family, they want to have kids. So they're on a biological clock. Well, ladies, the man is going to be on a financial clock. So he wants to make sure that he can provide and bring security and safety to you without a doubt. He doesn't want to bring struggle and heartache to you. He is willing to take on more than you can possibly believe. So that's why, going into the next thing, at the same time, he also doesn't want to come home and be disrespected. I can't tell you how many times I tell people this all the time. If I hear any girl that says, "Oh, I need a man that can handle me," left swipe,
Yeah,
left.
yeah.
No, I want nothing to do with it. Because if I
Anxiety
come
central.
home, exactly. Because if I come home from work from my 9 to 5, or for me, my 3 jobs, I don't want to
Yeah,
come home to, oh, you need to take the trash out. You need to do this. Why don't you ever like do anything around the house? Why don't you do that? You don't know the
yeah,
demons I've faced at work and the struggles that men face every day, not to mention being attacked on social media. I mean, I'm probably one of the most hated groups by the mainstream media right now, because I'm a military age fighting male Christian conservative,
Yeah.
straight man, they hate people like me. They
Yeah.
hate it because I am of the victimizing class.
Mm-hmm.
So the media can't stand me. So the struggles that I face in the everyday world, I don't want to come home to a girl that's going to give me nothing but disrespect and a headache. Men just want to be respected. And
Yeah.
it really doesn't take a lot for that to happen.
It's very simple.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a very simple thing. But if you disrespect him, why is he going to want to be around you? I want a girl that's going to bring me peace.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to ask for much. Peace to me is if I come home, she's sitting on the couch, maybe watching TV or reading a book, and I'll just lie down on the couch and rest my head on her lap, and she'll run her fingers through my hair on my head. That's peace to
Yep.
me. That's all
Yeah.
I want. I don't want somebody screaming at me some nonsense about something I can't control.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have other problems. Those being the hookup culture. So this has
Mm-hmm.
kind of been created like right before we were adults. I would say this really you started to see pick up in the 2000s, like 2010s. So we were still
Yeah.
younger, more kids. Um, but it hasn't helped us because we're in kind of that point right now, seeing that decline of relationships. So divorce rates are up over 50%. 80% of these relationships, the women leave. Why? Why is it that they leave? Well, because as studies show that women that have slept with more than 5 men have a less than 20% chance of having a happy, successful relationship. Also,
Interesting. Yeah.
women that have slept with 5 or more men have a 230% higher chance of cheating. That is insane.
That's mind blowing. Yeah. I think I
That's
made a
why
comment
most
about that.
guys want a girl who's like got no bodies. That's why
Yeah.
when they talk about body count, they get so offended. They're like, why are we talking about this? It shouldn't matter. Yes, it does, because women care about a man's future, men care about a woman's past.
Yeah.
You may not like it, it may sound ugly, but at the same time, you know what's crazy? Is that it's actually kind of insane. But women, single moms, have a significantly lower chance of finding a relationship with another man after they've already had a kid.
Yeah.
On the opposite foot, a single dad, a single father that goes and finds a new relationship
Mm-hmm.
has just as much of a chance of finding a partner as any other random single man or single woman. So
Yeah.
it's only these single moms that are basically at a disadvantage. Why?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I think that's
But
interesting.
it goes back to their past.
Yeah.
So
And
they
there
may
is something
not
to be
like it,
said
but
for,
that's why choice is so important, because ladies are born
yeah.
with their virtue. And that's why men face a different battle out in life. Men, I'd say at 18 years old, men have to build themselves up from nothing.
Yeah.
You have to build wealth, status, future, and all of that. But at 18, 19, 20, college age, those girls could just fucking get in a bikini and get on a boat, get invited to a casino, meet some rich dude, some athlete, whatever,
Yeah.
because they have that while they're younger.
Yeah.
But it only starts to deteriorate with age, and vice
Mhm.
versa for men. Men start to grow as they get older.
Yeah.
That's why you also see a lot of relationships now. I think it's a lot more common now that you see over 10-year age gaps in
Yeah.
relationships. Definitely here in South Carolina. I noticed that when I moved here.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, I think it's cool to talk about these subjects because there's things that, like you said, it might not sound all whatever, but there are things that are just true. And I think that is one of them. But that's one thing, like when I met Jocelyn, like got a lot of questions about that because there's a 6-year age gap. And to me, it was like, well, I've like exactly what you said. Like I've spent all this time working on myself, time in the army, now out here going to get my education. And like to me, like she's just started her like schooling. And not only did we like line up at the same like time, like she's in school and I'm in school, but it's very much like oh, like I like built up my experience a lot, and now I'm ready to like kind of share that with someone who is younger. It just happened to be younger than me. I wasn't opposed to being with someone older than me, but yeah, I think that's interesting. And I just it's a hard subject to talk about because people, when you make that comment, like a body count comment, like
Yeah.
people like get offended about it. But there, like you said, there is evidence. I talked to Spencer about that, about the more
You
than
know,
five guys thing,
well,
because
you
I
know
know that to
why?
be a study.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the crazy thing too is because imagine if everybody had their body count posted on their forehead.
Yeah.
Just think about that. I would tell the audience, think about that for a second. Is how would you look at everybody and everybody you know and people you don't know and
Yeah.
think if everybody had that posted on their forehead, would you be happy? Would you be ashamed? Would you be sad? Would you be happy? What would you feel? What would you want?
Yeah.
What would you be thinking about what other people think about you, or would you be too focusing on thinking about those other people yourself? You know, are you going to be selfish or not? But with going back to what I said about, you know, relationships a little earlier, is this is also why the red pill community exists,
Yeah.
because they've diagnosed the problem when it comes to this in relationships a lot. The red pill community talks about relationships mostly. They'll talk a little bit about economy and policy and business, entrepreneurship, and things like that. But most red
Yeah.
pillars talk about relationship a lot. And with that, you have like Just Pearly Things, you have Fresh and Fit podcast, you have Sneeko, Myron Gaines, Justin Waller, a whole bunch of people that talk about these things. And they diagnose the problem. You can kind of debate whether their solution is right, because now most of them will say, don't ever get married. Don't ever get married. However, I would kind of disagree to the point of, well, marriage cultivates men. It kind of gets them
Yeah.
to think more about just themselves, right? It's that real commitment. Well, yeah, it's also the government getting a handle on things, but they get a prenup. It's
Yeah.
not just, hey, oh, it's because the man wants to make sure you don't take anything. Well, that's part of it. But what a prenup is, it's actually great for men and women. I think people misconstrue that all the time. But the reason why it's great for both is because both of you have a say at the table, rather than if somehow things go wrong, the government is basically in control and has their hands all over your stuff, your assets, and everything
Yeah.
if you have to go file a divorce without it. Now, that's why I think marriage is great. But for dating, you want to date to marry. And you have a lot of people now that aren't in that standpoint. Why would you be dating them? We have
Big
these
waste of
whole
time.
talking episodes. Talking should have just been, oh, hey, would you like to go on a date with me? That's no longer the case. It might have been 20, 30 years ago. It's not
Yeah.
anymore, because you have this whole, I don't know what it is. And then you get to dating. It's like 3 steps now. It's like,
Yeah. Instead of just dating and
talking,
marriage.
into
Yeah.
dating, and then into marriage. And there's some people that are just like, no, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married because, I
Yeah.
just know I'm going to be with this person forever, which, okay, that's fine too. Whatever, do what you want. Nobody's stopping you.
Yeah.
However, it really shows that long-term commitment and really cultivates men. Um, and even women too, it's great for them because it protects them as well. But building a home for somebody, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that you can do. So when that happens, you see a lot of people revert back to their traditional instincts. As much as the left's not going to like to hear people say that,
Yeah.
what happens when things go wrong, or when there's an emergency, or when times are tough? People usually switch into their traditional thoughts or
Mhm.
survival skills, if you will.
Yeah.
If there's an emergency and there's a storm or a hurricane here, and then your house loses power, but you got the generator out, on the side of the house, who's going to go out there? You're going to send the man out there while it's
Yeah.
downpouring. You're not going to send the wife out there. You know, you're also
Yeah.
going to send him to make sure that the guy changing your oil is not fucking ripping you off.
Yeah.
But hey, I
Right.
mean, if I ask, hey, can you please get me a lemonade while I'm mowing this lawn? It's hot out here. It's 100 degrees in July in South Carolina. Can you at least do that for me, please? It should be yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it should be complementing each other. And that's what a
Yeah.
relationship should
It's
really
just
have. Is if you're
yeah.
not doing that, I mean, some people have like there's some girls out there that kind of want that domination complex. Like, oh, I want to provide for my man. I want to let him stay at home. I want to work. I want to pay for everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, you know what? If she wants to do that, she has every right to be the authoritarian in that household and make up whatever the rules are. If that's what the dynamic is, because then, yeah, you're the one taking charge. Well, then absolutely tell that dude to do whatever you need him to do,
Yeah.
but there should be 100% coming in from both sides, not just 50-50, but 100%, and forming a trust circle where it's just a two-handed circle. You don't let anybody in, because when you have more people in, that communication just gets harder and harder, and your arms just start going out and out and out. And
Yeah.
mind you, you're just looking around and you have a whole crowd of people that knows your business. And meanwhile, your significant others all the way on the other side. How are you going to be able to tell them anything without everybody else knowing?
Yeah.
So there's so many different things to relationships that can alter or help benefit those things. But relationships, it's finding the right person from the start. Planning, it's just like managing your life. And what are the 4 pillars of management? Planning, leading, organizing, controlling. And planning is one of the most important ones.
Yeah, I like that because I've definitely spent time picking the wrong people. I think we all do. Obviously, it's part of the learning experience. But like as I grow up and as I, like kind of self-reflect and look back, I'm like, man, like what was I thinking? Because it's like it's right in front of you, and it's almost I think it's almost like a doubt that there could be something better, although that's not true. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like you find someone that you think is so good, but you're like, there's a lot of red flags here. And instead of being like, well, there's someone better out there, I deserve better, it's like a self-sabotage, like I'm not good enough, I'll just settle with this person type thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that's can be one of the downfalls too, is it's a lot harder to figure out kind of where you're at than from somebody on the outside looking in that can see all the red flags.
Mhm.
Because a lot of us, and I'm guilty of it myself in the past, of
Yeah.
saying, hey, I see a lot of these red flags, but it's me, so it's different. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you start seeing them lining up, you have to stop and question it.
Yeah.
Step yourself out for a second and really focus on, what do I need to do? What questions do I need to ask myself? Or what do I need to figure out? Like, that is the next step. Is this
Yeah.
something that's attainable, achievable, and going to be for the betterment of me? Is this going to help me in the long term? Is this going to be something that actually blossoms into a successful relationship? Or is this a time waste?
Yeah.
Is this person building me up just, to drop me off in nothing?
Yeah. I look back and I really like sometimes I'm so confused why like I personally have spent time in certain relationships. So when I see other people in relationships like that, it's like I guess they just gotta learn their
Yeah.
lesson, man.
Well, and there's
It's
also
hard.
people out there that will just toy with you. Like, there
Yeah.
are people that are just game players. They
Mhm.
don't care. And
Yeah.
it may be hard to tell at first, but some people are good actors. They
Yeah.
are. I mean, I don't remember the exact name of the movie. I think it was a Paul Rudd movie. I think it's called The Shape of Things, and where he is a custodian and then he meets this girl, I think, who is a student of this college, and he's only a little bit
Mhm.
older than her. And then they basically start dating, and she's like in, I don't know if it was theater or some like artistic
Oh,
program.
yeah.
Um, and then basically the end of the semester comes up, and she makes like her whole final project is basically, I don't know if it was like a PowerPoint or a project about him, and saying how she turned him around. So she cleaned him up from just being some random like custodial guy. Like, now he like is getting in better shape. He works out. He talks better. He reads. He does this. How she changed him. That was all for a project. When meanwhile he thought it was all like a real relationship, and they were acting
Oh,
like it was a
wow.
real relationship. But it was only so she could see if she could do that.
Like an experiment. That's
That's
crazy.
exactly what it was. It was an
Yeah.
experiment. And there are people out there that, not to say that's that movie verbatim, but
Yeah, yeah,
there are
yeah.
people out there like that,
Yeah.
that will just do that and continue until they get bored. And it goes back to what we said earlier, is why do some of these people even get out of relationships, even for a different reason? Is there's plenty of women now that got out of relationships that say, oh, well, I was just bored. Like he treated me great. There was nothing wrong. He was awesome. He was fine. I just wanted something different. And it turns out they like slept with like 5, 10, 20 other dudes. And they were like, oh, I kind of want
Yeah.
him back. What? No, you don't just get to go around the carousel because
Yeah.
you didn't want to keep walking around Broadway to, use that as take a break. I mean, it's disgusting behavior.
Yeah. I've definitely had that during my lower points in my life. I feel like I contributed to the toxic side of that society for a little while. Just like, but for me, very interesting because I kind of grew up very like I didn't lose my virginity until I was 20 years old. Very like waiting till marriage type deal, right? So like my rebellious period was like a couple months long. Like that's pretty much it. And now looking back, I realized that a lot of these kids that are going to college, it's almost even like I saw a video about like this girl calling out the fathers of these 18-year-old women going to college. Like they're getting out of the father's helping them move into their dorms and they're in like crop tops, basically a bra and booty shorts. And it's just like almost become like an acceptable, it's like the college experience type thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
parents say
it's
that
kind
all
of
the time. They're like, I
ridiculous.
want you to have the college experience. And it's like I've only lived like a couple months, maybe a year and a half ish of that rebellious behavior. But I could only imagine if I was like that for just like 4 or 5 years with
People are
not a
doing that
care
for
in the
4 years.
world.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they're like, oh,
And
it's
they
college. You can do whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
Now
it's
it's
like
become a
erased
whole.
from the record. Erased from the
Yeah,
record when you
like
graduate.
like
That's not
oh
how
well,
this works.
I was in college, made a few bad decisions. That's why it's all beat
A
to
few.
shit. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing, is it doesn't really solve any problems. It only actually brings detriment, because the other problem psychologically, that when you sleep with more people, that the ladies don't realize this, is when you sleep with more people, she's comparing, let's say, her 30th one to the 29 guys that she had before.
Yeah.
She may not admit that. It's like in the back of her mind, because
Yeah.
that's
It's
one of
like,
the problems when you say, oh, yeah, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Well, then you're just going to want to keep casting the line out there and fishing. And you're just going to keep doing it
yeah.
over and over and over again. And it's not going to stop. The likelihood of you finding somebody after you've had so many bodies becomes almost impossible. But at that
Yeah.
point, your worth has just dropped down because you have no, self-esteem, and you have no self-worth, and you're not, um, I'm trying to think of the word, not composed, but self-preserved.
Yeah. So how do you think that compare? I'm just picking your brain. How do you think that compares with the guy, like guys?
I think for guys, I
Because I think
think
the stigma is like the more women you sleep with as a guy, like the cooler, or like even like these
so.
influencers
Yeah,
that we look
so
up to,
there
and
is
they're like
definitely a stigma and like a stereotype, like reversal when it comes to that. Is like, oh yeah, he's either
exactly,
a player, he's like the Michael Jordan, the goat, if he gets a lot, and then girl, it's because, like I said, it's like they work different. Women start with their virtue and they lose it as time goes down. They hold a value from the get go. And if you want to keep that value up here, you can't be having that behavior, acting like this down here, because then it'll drop and bring you down and bring you down. And then nobody's going to want you. That's what I tell them. I'm like, do you think all these girls that, okay, for example, how many of these girls that you see on whatever podcast or Fresh and Fit that talk to these red pill guys and say, they ask the ladies on the panel and say, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think you are? Oh, I'm a 10. Oh, I'm a 10. Oh, I'm a 10. I'm a 10. I'm a woman. I'm a 10. Of course. Delusion.
yeah,
Okay. Market sets the price. Same thing for men. The market sets the price. The market determines my value, not, you know, me. I could just say, yeah, I'm a guy in today's society. If I said I'm a 10, people are gonna be like, you're ridiculous. They're gonna say you're a fool. because I have to build my wealth up. Now, if I had status, if I was a millionaire, if I had 100K followers on Instagram, if I was, had boats and businesses and all these other things, yeah, I'd have the status. I'd have the money. I'd have it
Yeah.
all. But without that, I'm just a regular guy. I mean, look at the guys that work at Walmart. I feel so bad for. I see some of the same guys that are working the um, uh, protection, the asset protection,
Yeah.
and the same, they're the same like 4 or 5 guys at Walmart, and I'm like, nobody really says anything to them. I was like, people could probably be rude to them. They like people don't pay attention as who some of these guys are, and some of these could be really nice dudes. Even the guys
Yeah.
in the self checkout line. One guy a little social awkward, but talks to you, says hi, tries to make conversation, talk about like video games or something. I'm like, you know what? That's good. Like good
Yeah.
job, man. Like I'm proud. Like they are invisible.
Yeah.
Like why would you want a superpower to be invisible? When people say, "What superpower do you want?" If you could have any superpower in the world, be invisible. Most men are invisible to over 70% of people.
Yeah. That's
So
deep when it comes to mental health
it
too. Yeah.
becomes very tough. And men, like I said,
Yeah.
they have to build their way up. So it's kind of a different thing.
Yeah. It's just, I've kind of realized how real this was when I've had like, whether it's coworkers or whoever, just like make comments about like, guys, but money wise, like, oh, I just need a man that's this. And I'm like, there are so many like good dudes out there that are just like not 45 and rich,
Well, oh
and
my God, yeah.
it's like
Well,
hard, man. You're like, what in the world? And then you like question them and you're like you hear that and then you're like, how many people are like that? Or is everybody like that? Does everybody just
yeah.
want that? It's like, what happened to like the deeper, like spiritual, intimate connection over materialistic
Well,
things, pretty much,
and that's another thing too, is that a lot of these relationships don't have, and that's why a guy, Matthew Hussey, who talks to women a lot, he used to talk to guys too, but he also talks to women, and how to get the guy is one of his brands, and so he kind of helps the ladies understand like what it's like for us,
Hmm.
and through doing that, he talks about how we also want to feel and be appreciated.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we may not always get that. Um, I was going to circle that back to a point you just made. Um,
Materialistic, spiritual connection, stuff like that.
yes,
Maybe.
with connection is there's also another thing called building intimacy
Hmm.
and uh, not delayed gratification, but building sexual anticipation.
Gotcha.
That's where you do not get actively involved early on into the relationship. A kiss or there is one
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit
Yeah.
on
I
the
get what
neck,
you're saying.
whatever. But the full action can't come till later on down the road. You have to build the sexual anticipation. So that way there's still going to be some mystery. You don't tell your partner everything from the get go. You don't give away all your trade
Yeah.
secrets. A
Yeah.
girl doesn't a girl doesn't really want a guy who's truly an open book.
Yeah.
They want a
No.
mystery novel. They want a
Yeah.
mystery novel. If they see everything from the get go, they're not going to want to chase you. That's why they don't
Another
go
game.
for the guys, that are at Walmart that are invisible to them, because they're looking for, and you see them on these panels, they're like, all right, well, I want a guy that makes, okay, even if you bring it to a reasonable standard and say more like $70,000 a year, which is still a
Hmm.
pretty good salary,
Yeah.
6 foot, which men can't change that. Um, and, he's single. Well, then you also have to ask yourself, okay, of those guys, which is, for these girls, that's like less than 0.5%. How many of them do you actually want to be with? How many of them want to be with you? And how many of them want to be completely loyal to you, meaning not lingering with anybody else?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a lot more zeros after that decimal.
Yeah.
But they don't want to acknowledge that. They're like, oh, well, no, I know I'm going to find, I know I'm going to find. Okay. You could also end up like the upscale liberal white women who are 40, 50, 60 years old with all their nice hand purses. They took some nice vacations, maybe have a nice Tesla or some higher end car, but they live by themselves and they're miserable. And then
Yeah.
they realize they can't have kids and it's too late. and then they have nothing.
Yeah.
That's why they say all the time, one of the greatest things that you can do, jobs that you can have, is being a mom.
Yeah.
And that, I mean,
I think it's
what greater thing can you ask for?
yeah, I think it's kind of you said something about it earlier, but I actually have a marriage class this semester, and it's interesting to see how like we have gotten away from the more traditional style. Like our generation has a lot of like we're becoming more aware of like a bunch of different stuff, and I think that's good, but like along with the wokeness and all this stuff, it's like I don't like not getting married is like a cool thing now. You know what I mean? Or
Oh,
like
absolutely.
just hooking
Yeah,
up your whole life is like a cool
it's
thing now.
because
And it's
now
like,
we see it way too often of a lot of these women taking half the guy's stuff. I mean, look at Bill Gates. Didn't
mhm,
Jeff Bezos and his wife just split? I mean, Tom Brady, his wife. I mean,
it's wild.
they just take half their stuff. And they say, well, because they're used to that style of living, that they're inherently, righted this stuff. They deserve to
Mm,
inherit half their stuff. That's
yeah,
insane.
that is wild. Yeah.
I mean, alimony and other things like that is
Yeah.
ridiculous. To that point, I mean, like it just
Couldn't imagine that.
it
I'm sure some people don't get divorced specifically for that
well,
reason and then stay in unhappy
no,
marriages
and
because they
not,
don't want to lose half their shit.
obviously most aren't going to want, hear that and be like, oh, that's not the major reason. Okay, I'm not saying that's the main reason. That's not what I'm saying at all. But
Yeah.
it does bring hesitancy into men now wanting to go forward with that. Or most men now are going to say, okay, well, then I want a prenup. And then that's
Yeah.
when girls are going to start to question the relationship too from the get go because she thinks that he's already questioning it.
Yeah. I think that's like a
But
pretty
now we've
unpopular thing.
incentivized. But what we all know is common knowledge of you know relationships and marriage is that over 50% of them don't work. Do you think any reasonable or very competent person is going to want to get into a marriage without one at this point? Probably not. Not with the way it's going downhill in
Yeah.
marriage and divorce rates going up.
That's an interesting thought. I didn't really give it much thought before.
Well, I mean, and we'll see what it's like in the next 10 years, but
Yeah. I think a lot
or
of
even
people in the
20 years.
moment are like
But
so in love they don't think about it, you know?
well, here's the thing. Back in the day, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you also had like 9-month marriage babies, right? 6-month marriage babies, in which after World War II, um, you started to have men come back from war and they started to have children with these women. And they weren't married yet, but they got married right before the children were, conceived.
Yeah.
So that way they could be fully formed families, keep the name, have the whole family structure, and keep the nuclear family alive. And that's what's attacked today is the nuclear family because a household that a child has with a mom and a dad is single-handedly best set up to take care of that child.
Yeah.
Not
I would
just
agree with that. Yeah.
not just a mom, not just a dad, a mom and dad. And the nuclear family cares a lot more about that child than the school system, than government entities do as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why, teachers unions can be so scary, especially when they don't want to have parents involved in what the kids are learning nowadays because they want to indoctrinate children. That's what they do. They
Yeah.
want to teach them whatever they want and they think they should be inherently in charge. That's why McAuliffe lost to Youngkin, in that governor's race in what was it,
Mm.
West Virginia or Virginia? McAuliffe was the incumbent. He lost his seat because he backed the teachers and Youngkin backed the parents and said, no, every parent
Yeah.
deserves to know what their child is learning in their school, and they should be in charge of what they're learning. And if the parents aren't okay with that, you cannot
Yep.
teach that curriculum. That seems like a very fair standard because you can't say to any teacher, if you have any teachers and parents sit down and really say, who cares more about this child?
Yeah.
Of course,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
parents do. So if I was a parent and I go into these, teachers meetings, I say, why are you teaching them this? Do you really think that you care or know more than what I want for my kid? You don't house them. You don't feed them. You don't take care of them. You don't take them to the doctors when they're sick. You don't pay all the necessities they need to live. How dare you try to say that I have no say or right in what I think
Yeah.
is best for my kid?
Yeah. That's crazy to me.
It is.
All right. Well, we are reaching close to the end, but I know that you're heavily involved in CrossFit, and I wanted you to kind of elaborate on it a little bit and your community that you're building. So, if you just want to smash them together, talk a little bit about whatever. I don't have a time limit. I just like to wrap it up in the
Okay.
next like 20. So,
Okay. So with CrossFit, I ended up starting CrossFit officially in February of 2021. February
okay.
16th. It was a Tuesday. I
Oh,
remember
nice.
it
You remember
well.
that day?
Yeah, because I remember things that are important.
Okay.
And now, it wasn't exactly my first time doing CrossFit, however. Back in high school, I had a high school gym teacher who was a games athlete, and
Okay.
him and his wife had a gym set up right across from the high school at the time when I was in high school. And his wife was actually a little bit more popular. She was the 2009 female CrossFit Games champion, Tanya
Oh, wow.
Wagner. Um, So they were, pretty early on known in the sport. I don't know how much of renown they have now, probably more amongst people that have been doing it for a decade or many years. She still commentates at a lot of events, but I've met her in person too and gone back to their gym as an adult after I officially started
That's cool.
CrossFit. But when I did it in high school, it was one of the hardest ranked gym courses in the state of Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
And I had come back from an injury that I had sophomore year. I had fractured my ankle. So that summer, I got a little thicker. I got a little fattier in the face, the gut. I was like skinny fat. Wasn't really that active that summer. So when I came back junior year of high school, I did that class and my shape turned right around. I was finishing these workouts at the bottom of the class. By the end of it, I was in about the middle. So my strength had
Nice.
gone up. I'd become more fit. I felt a lot better. I liked how I felt about that. It wasn't until 2020 when I had already been living here in South Carolina. I went back and stayed with a friend in Exton, Pennsylvania for a week in October of that year. And it was kind of when things had lightened up in Pennsylvania before it crammed back down again in November. And I watched a whole decade of fitness documentary on YouTube. And
Mm.
it's a great documentary. I would still recommend to most people to watch it, but it's based off the 2016 games and how Matt Frazier ended up becoming the GOAT. And that was his first win after becoming second twice. But it follows a whole bunch of athletes and things like that. And you see the insight to the games and kind of what they do. And you learn a little bit more about the like the games athlete side of it besides the methodology, because with CrossFit
Gotcha.
it's a whole methodology first. So that's what I tell people when they try to start CrossFit or think about talking CrossFit or they want to get into the gym is check it out. Just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just try it once. Most gym owners, as soon as you come in, they're very welcoming. They'll show you some of the movements. They might have you do like a foundations course if you've never done it or you're not really active. Um,
Hmm.
or if you're not familiar with certain movements, they'll usually do a foundations course for a couple days with that. Some gyms you can jump into a class for the first time and you'll learn a little bit here and there. But the nice thing about CrossFit as a methodology is it's very scalable. So
Yeah.
CrossFit is basically using a whole bunch of functional fitness movements all together to shape the body and mind. So it's also kind of a mindset thing. So the nice
Yeah.
thing about it is the programming is already set up for you by most gyms. A lot of gyms there's different big platform programmings that gyms pay for, whether it's CrossFit Mayhem, that's originated by Rich Froning himself, that they sell publicly. HWPO training, a lot of gyms have now. That's Matt Frazier's personal training. There's Proven, that's by Shane and Tia Toomey, the 7-time fittest woman. Um,
Nice.
Like, so if you go into these gyms, you'll scale things from the get-go with certain weights and things like this because you never tried it before. The ability is to start to pick up on some things and learn some of the basic skills like cleans, how to snatch, how to do pull-ups before you get into more intricate movements like
Yeah.
double unders with a jump rope, like handstand push-ups, like bar muscle ups, or even if it's butterflying pull-ups together, that becomes a very hard thing to do rather than just kipping or doing jumping pull-ups. But you could even start out
Yeah.
with simpler things like ring rows. So it's very easy for everybody. The thing is it's scalable. So what you want to do is don't look at it from an athlete standpoint. Don't look at the games and say, hey, that's what CrossFit is. That's not what it is. It
Yeah.
is a group of people coming to work out for the betterment of themselves. And the nice thing is the community in almost all these gyms is the same because they're all welcoming. It's like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Good, good. And at the end, after you do the workout, it's high fives all around or fist pumps. Good
Yeah.
job, good job, good job, great job. It's like, all right, have it, we'll sit and talk a little bit afterwards, stretch, and then we leave. Be like, all right, you coming tomorrow? You coming tomorrow? You coming tomorrow? Just show up. And guess what?
Yeah.
I'll see some of these people 6 days in a row. And then on the seventh day I come back, they say the same thing. Oh, hey, how's it going? Well, since I saw you yesterday, not much has changed, right? But that's how it
Yeah.
is because they care. So
Yeah.
this
That's
community,
cool.
you see a whole bunch of things, happen. And unfortunately, there was a Summit CrossFit in North Carolina. I think it's right around Asheville.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, in the storm, Helene was destroyed and the water rose over about 15 feet, completely
Damn.
destroying their equipment. And we've had athletes from there that also competed at a local competition called Fittest to the Coast that just wrapped up their
Mhm.
qualifier this week. Um, and the nice thing about Fittest to the Coast is they do giveaways on some equipment and things like that. Well, last year, one of the gyms that won equipment up in Virginia, they had heard about CrossFit Summit and donated that machine that they won last year to
Oh,
CrossFit
nice.
Summit for them to
That's cool.
and finding a new space. And the donations that they raised, I believe, were over $250,000 that
Wow.
CrossFit Summit raised.
Yeah.
So the
That's cool.
CrossFit community, and that reached even the games, people, games athletes all over the country and world were reposting that because that's how the community is. It's sad to hear stories like that. There was another story a couple years ago in Alaska where a roof caved in and unfortunately killed one of the members, and I believe it was one of the owners of the gym or the wife of the owner of the gym, and that was a tragic story. Thousands were donated to help them as well. So the CrossFit community is a community like no other. I think it's one of the best gym communities that you can see out there because it's also people that are going through the same struggles that also work everyday jobs. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
people that I go in there and work out with work as um, contractors for local builders, home builders. Some of them work at Coastal. One of them's the head of the math department. I mean, another guy, our gym owner, also
Interesting.
works at Costco, and he's a games athlete. So I mean, people come from all different walks of
Yeah.
life. Another one's a firefighter. Another one's a vet tech. Another one's a restaurant entrepreneur. Another one's a server, bartender. Right? Like
Yeah.
we come from all different walks of life. Every time you step into the gym, but the community is always going to be there and always asking, hey, what's up?
Yeah. That's cool. So explain a little bit about the community you're building and throw out where they can find you and all that, and then we'll just wrap it all together.
Yeah. So I am building a community that I am calling Predators of the Palms. This reason I started this community, and it's only mostly on Instagram right now. I will eventually launch a YouTube channel with it as well. There's a link tree set up for both on there, but go to Predators of the Palms on Instagram. And with the community, the reason why I set it up is to help bring light more things about functional fitness and mindset media to people abroad. So mainly with things starting in our local area. I'm starting here in Myrtle Beach. So I like to post a lot about sports, activities, and things that are going on in our local communities. So things that are correlating to CrossFit, things that are also correlating with news at Coastal, like Coastal football, Coastal baseball, other CCU sports, things even with other local sports, like the Carolina Forest Myrtle Beach game. I covered a little bit of that the other day, and that was an awesome game. I mean, some of those high school footballers are huge. I mean, the
Yeah.
game was insane this past Friday. It was 52-38. It was an intense game. I mean, going back and
Yeah.
forth in the first half, and it gets to 17-17. You're like, this is a high school game, and it's so back and forth. And then it goes to 52-38. We didn't know which way it was going to go, but an amazing game nonetheless. So also bringing up news about other things going on in the community. But another big side of it that I like to repost is things about discipline and mindset, and especially in fitness, because you hear people talk about this all the time. And a guy that I like to listen to is Chris Williamson, who I'm sure you've
Hmm.
heard of. A
I probably recognize him if I saw him.
very big commentator and interviewer like Joe Rogan. He talks with a lot of people. He's a very smart guy. I think he's a very smart intellectual.
Hmm.
And something he said in a interview with Piers Morgan, I don't know how long ago it was, but I just saw this recently. They were talking about depression, and Piers asked him. He said, "Well, what do you think comes first? Is it, you know, uh, do you have to do something with the body or the mind to strengthen yourself out of depression?" And he said, "Well, I think it starts with the body first." And Pierce was like, "Well, what? Hi, why? Why can't it be just of the mind? Why don't you just
Yeah.
like think on it?" He's like, "Well, what does thinking ever do?" It's like, are you going to ask? Nobody can think their way out of depression.
Yeah.
However, he
It's
also goes
action.
to say that's like asking a drug addict to sniff their way out of cocaine. It's not going to happen. The more you talk about your problems, the more it's going to extenuate and grow
Yeah.
and grow and grow. And
That's
that's why
proven
sometimes
too.
talking about the same thing over and over again is not going to get you anywhere. What you have to do is you have to shift the focus. That was something that even Andrew Tate said. I know a lot of people don't like him, but he says, "Oh, when people talk about depression, it's like, well, all right, go get a six pack. And when you get a six pack, tell me if you're still depressed." Well, thinking about that, I mean, your focus is shifted away from the depression. You're focused on, all right, well, okay, let me go get the six pack, which is obviously a very hard thing to do. And the nice thing about having a six pack is if it was easy, everybody would have one. You have to become a very disciplined individual to gain that. And you also have to have something else, like anybody else who goes to the gym knows, is delayed gratification, which is very important. And that's why you have
Yeah.
a lot of people who are very smart people, and a lot of entrepreneurs love to see, applicants that they have for jobs walk in. They're usually fit people. They say, because I know they're disciplined enough to do this job, because I know they're going to get it done, because I know they can handle it, because I
Hmm.
know they can do this, because they have the discipline. They have the physical look of discipline on their body.
Yeah.
There's no greater confidence that you can get from that than looking at your body naked in the mirror.
And just
You're
knowing.
not
Yeah.
borrowing the credibility of a Rolex, of a Ferrari,
Hmm.
of anything else, of your smartwatch, your iPhone, your whatever, your Louis Vuitton. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not borrowing the credibility of that. It's your
Yep.
body, and nobody can change that. You had to work for your body. You can work to just, buy nice, expensive things, but those things won't
Yeah.
last forever. But your own body is your own temple, and you got to have a healthy temple to have a healthy mind.
Yeah. I find it ironic when like an unfit person gets out of a supercar. I'm like, uh,
Yeah, now
you're
it's not to say that they're not.
you were cool until you got out, and then I realized
Yeah,
that
now it's
you
not
think
to
the
say that
car
they're
gives
not
you value.
capable. I mean, they can
Yeah.
absolutely be capable of doing those things. But do I think that the person, let's say like the fat guy getting out of that supercar, is going to be as well versed if you put both of them into other environments and say, okay, build the same company, or build, another high end company or
Yeah.
some business with a high, million net worth, in this amount of time in multiple other fields. Not many people are going to do that. Some
Yeah.
people only have one niche. But what's the likelihood that the disciplined person in the gym who started in the same industry as that guy in the supercar is going to take what he knows and take his
Oh.
discipline and say, hey, I know I can do this in another
Hmm.
field.
Yeah.
I know what I need to do to be able to research, to be able to do this, to have the drive and work, and even maybe if physical output if it comes to it, but to actually have the hustle and grind to build another
Mhm.
company.
Yeah. I know my personal life, I think fitness is probably the foundation to everything, really.
Yeah.
To put it simply, like mental health,
Well, and
physical health, you know, how
that's
I
what I
view
tell people all the
myself.
time. I think, you know, my thought on depression is probably different from most people, and many people might not like this if I say it, but we all have different times of weakness. I
Yeah.
think depression is kind of a string of those weaknesses back to back to back, and I
Mhm.
think that's really all that it is. Because if you could have one bad day at work, maybe somebody said something you didn't like, to
I see
you,
what
and
you're saying, yeah.
it just maybe the same thing happened again the next day, and maybe the next day something else happened that was completely differently correlated, not in the workplace but maybe at home, and was also not good, and it just
All
starts to be
builds
this
up.
downhill effect. But it's all just these small shortcomings that just are on the same string. But if you get off the string and change the attitude
Yeah.
and change the direction of where you want to take that, like I said, it's the focus and the purpose, that if you shift the purpose to something else and you get focused on that and start doing that other activity,
Mhm.
you're gonna forget about that other thing. That's gonna be long gone.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you can't think yourself out of depression. You have to do
Act.
something. You have to
Act.
have
Yeah.
purpose in something else. And I think that's why a lot of people may become depressed in the first place, is because they feel like at a certain moment in time they don't have any purpose. And I think that's what you find a
Yeah.
lot of men are looking for nowadays. And because that's what really brings them happiness,
Yeah.
is being busy, building an empire, building a family, creating a home for themselves, building a
Yeah.
brand, right? Building their body.
Mhm. Cool, man. Well, that's a lot of stuff, but I just want to thank you for coming on here. I'm gonna put your the Instagram for your page in the bio, so people will be able to see that. And I'll be streaming this episode pretty shortly, so you'll see it out there, and I'll send you the links and everything.
All right, awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Heck yeah,
We'll
we'll have to
talk
do it
more
again
in the
sometime.
future. Yeah, we'll pick up some different topics to discuss and get you back on. All right.
No, yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome, man. Have a good
See you
one.
later. You too.
See you.